Are you doing it or am I doing it?
Welcome
back
to
the
Genus
Brewing
channel
for
now. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Genus Brewing episodes. I don't know if that's a thing, but today we're going to be talking more about homebrewing myths. This is something that kind of is why a lot of you out there watch us in the first place.
We put out a couple videos already, so if you haven't watched those, you should definitely watch them after you watch this one.
There'll be suggestions probably to do that.
But anyway, today we are going to be discussing a few more myths that we have decided are worth discussing.
Yeah.
So let's get started.
The first one is one that's really misunderstood, and a lot of people ask this. We get this probably at least once a week, and that is, can you let beers sit in primary fermentation for too long?
Oh God, never do that.
Wow, it's going to make your yeast all autolysis-y, and you're going to get Band-Aid flavors. That's not actually true.
Nope.
So
well.
Yeah, well,
if you leave your yeast cake sitting for like 6 months.
And there are some conditions which make this more or less true. For example, if you have huge temperature swings during fermentation on your yeast cake, that can induce more of that autolytic flavor. But that myth actually came from basically breweries that had they have conical bottoms and they have a lot of weight on top of the yeast that induces
a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure that induces that autolysis. The yeast exploding.
Autolysis, because when something lyses, it blows up.
Makes sense.
Bio nerd jokes.
So this yeast exploded. Jokes, right? Man.
All right, but bottom line is, this is kind of another one of those things where it might be an issue on a large commercial brewery, but is only going to be an issue if you've got huge temperature swings or a lot of time involved on a homebrew scale.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some other kind of nuanced things that can induce that autolysis flavor, but just not something to really worry about. And this all leads into kind of our second myth, which is the necessity for a secondary fermentation.
A lot of people still believe that you need a secondary fermentation, and this is just still a relic of the days where we did not have good yeast.
Yes.
Back in, 80s, 90s even, yeast packs were pretty bad. A lot of times it'd take them like 3 or 4 days just to get started, and the secondary, the kind of purpose of that was actually to re-oxygenate that beer and hopefully get it to finish out for you, because very few beers finished back then. As
an ongoing maintenance after the bad yeast phase, we got into just the fact that it was generally used for clarity. And so that's kind of why it continued, even when we started getting good yeast and your beer tasted good after primary fermentation. You do secondary fermentation for a clarity's sake, but even then, it's still not necessary.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of people that'll ask, okay, do I need secondary fermentation for dry hopping? The answer is still no, especially if you're doing the biotransformation dry hopping that we like to do.
Yeah, the way we see it nowadays is secondary is probably more detrimental than beneficial, because that transferring process is probably going to cause excessive oxidization, and especially for beer styles like New England's that are especially sensitive to oxygen, that can actually have poor effects on the beer because of that transferring process.
And there are some instances, like maybe if you're doing fruit and you don't have a really good way to hang your fruit, that you might go to a secondary fermentation. But for the most part, all you're doing by a secondary fermentation is introducing a new risk. You're risking the oxygen, like you mentioned. You're risking contamination.
Yep.
And it's just easier to throw for dry hopping or for whatever, just throw it into primary. And then if you're bottling or kegging, you have kind of a clarification step with bottling, going into a bottling bucket if you do that, or just in the bottles. The yeast will settle out. You'll get more gunk than you probably want. But
basically, that is your secondary.
That's your secondary fermentation right there. And the same thing in the keg. Your clarification step in the keg is just the longer it sits cold and under pressure, and even if you have it on tap, everything will crash to the bottom. You'll create, a caked layer of gunk that you don't necessarily want. But after you draw off that caked layer, you have a little divot right where the dip tube is, and you're just drawing off clear beer. On
to our next myth.
I can't read your handwriting there. Oh, 0 minute boil, yeah.
Jesus, not that bad. 0 minutes equals 0 IBUs. Totally right on, right?
Exactly. You're not going to get any bitterness because it's been boiling for 0.
Yeah, no, that's just wrong.
And this isn't so much a myth, so much as just people misunderstanding brewing calculators.
That's true. So everybody's using, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people use brewing calculators nowadays because they are amazing. They make your life way easier handwriting that stuff out. I did it. It's not fun.
Yeah.
Calculators are awesome, but a lot of them will say that if you have a 0-minute addition in your boil, that it doesn't add any bitterness at all, and unless you are managing to drop that beer down to 70 degrees instantaneously, that's just not going to happen. There's some laws of physics against you there.
You got Iceman working for you, something like that. He's just gonna, you got Elsa.
Your utilization will vary depending on how quickly you cool down that wort.
And this is one of the biggest things in homebrewing recipes that people don't really understand. It's very wildly dependent on your system.
Exactly.
So if I'm doing a 0-minute addition and I'm using an immersion chiller, for example, and my immersion chiller can get my beer down in 5 minutes, and I do a 0-minute addition, I'm still getting a lot of great flavors across that swing, but I'm probably getting less utilization out of the hops in general. And I'm also getting a lot less bitterness. On commercial scales, a lot of people that are doing a 0-minute addition, and people that we know that brew commercially, don't really take into account the fact that it's a much different system than on their home scale, and it takes them 2 hours to bring their beer,
not more, yeah,
from a boil down to, at that point, if your beer takes 2 hours to get from a boil down to pitching temperature, then a 0-minute addition is essentially a bittering addition. And then you get into the whole during the cool down stage, there are different levels of solubility of the different oils and the different beta acids in your hops, and so you can do a single hop citra and get a very, very different beer, all using everything after the end of the boil, as somebody else doing a single hop citra all after the boil. It's weird, and it's very, very system dependent.
Very complex. Nobody still has it figured out yet. I can't tell you how many times somebody comes in and they say, my beer got infected. And I say, well, was your equipment clean? And they go, oh yeah, I sanitized the crap out of it. And then I go and I end up seeing their equipment or a picture of it, and it's dirty equipment. And so that's kind of a misconception people have. They think that just because they rinse something with sanitizer, that's going to stop contamination. But the reality is if you have soil on any piece of equipment that's touching your beer post-boil, this is when it's cooled down, right? Any soil on your equipment that you can visibly see, sanitizer will not touch, because it only penetrates so deep, and you will actually still have microbial life within that piece of soil.
And this is the biggest things I see with this are going to be your ball valves and your hands. Sanitizing your hands. If you haven't washed your hands in the last 5 to 10 minutes, and
Wait, I'm sorry, what? Yeah.
But wash your hands, physically wash your hands, and then dry them with the single-use towel, paper towel. That's the best way to keep your hands clean. And then, just for that extra layer of security, you can dunk them in sanitizer. But if you haven't washed your hands in the last 15 minutes, they're a great spot to get an infection.
Also, you have that great friend that always loves to say, hey, how's that beer doing today? Huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, man, yeah. Okay, anyway.
So if you're brewing with someone and your beer gets infected, blame it on them.
So yes, as for that though, sanitizer, it's always a great step, but make sure that everything's clean. I always emphasize clean equipment will always outbeat sanitized equipment.
Yeah, I'd rather you not sanitize at all and be clean than the other way around.
Exactly. On to fly sparging. Everybody says fly sparging is way better than batch sparging. So what is the difference anyway between these two?
So fly sparging is a continuous sparging technique where as you are draining off beer from the bottom of your mash tun or the top of your mash, whatever you're draining from depending on your system, as you're draining off beer worts, you are adding hot water to basically rinse as you go. This is what commercial systems do, because commercial systems have a designated hot liquor tank, and they have a cool arm that'll help drain everything during the sparge, and then they have pumps that have to get the beer out somehow. And a lot of commercial systems don't have a mash rake, which is the equivalent of your mash paddle. So a lot of commercial systems fly sparge, ergo a lot of home brewers think that fly sparging is the most efficient way to mash an all-grain batch of beer.
Wrong! So another method to sparge is called batch sparging, which is literally where you mash in, drain the liquid out, you add enough liquid to reach your boil volume back into your mash tun, let that sit for 10 or 15 minutes, absorb some more of those sugars, and then drain that off. It's actually a much faster method, and for most systems, you're actually going to lose maybe 1 or 2% of efficiency. And I've actually found that on a system I had at home, I didn't lose any efficiency.
There are a lot of occasions where batch barging can be more efficient, especially if you have an inefficient manifold. If you've built a cooler mash tun and you have an inefficient manifold, then your fly sparge, the efficiency of your fly sparge is very dependent on basically the path that the water is taking as it drains through your grain bed. If you have an inefficient mash whatever, or you're brewing a bagging. Brewing a bagging is basically, it's the new way to do it, and that you kind of need to batch barge if you're doing these methods, because you get being able to stir in the batch water on the second go around. You get it, all mixed around, and then you let it sit, and then you vorlav again, and then you drain it all off, and you still get clear wort.
Big pain in the butt.
Yeah. Or you also mentioned if you have a heavy grain bill.
Oh yeah.
That's another way. That's another reason that batch barging can actually be more efficient.
Yeah, especially if you have a grain bill that has a lot of like rye or flaked grains in it that's wanting to sort of like compact and cake, or if you just have a mash tun that tends to have a really deep grain bed in it that also wants to cake or channel, do a batch barge on it. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to mean that you don't have a 3-hour-long sparge because it's draining so slowly because everything is compacted so much in there. And yeah, you will probably not lose any kind of efficiency.
Yeah, and you might even gain some.
Okay. Finally, last but not least, or should I say last but not yeast, when we age in bottles and or kegs, bottle conditioning. Shoot.
I don't know what you're saying with this.
Yeah, nobody needs to bottle condition anymore. That doesn't do anything for the beer, right?
This one's not actually a myth.
Yeah,
a lot of people will go ahead and so yeast in bottles. We get a lot of people that are on either side of the aisle with this one, but truth be told, if you're going to age, if you have a long-term storage for beer, bottle conditioning actually is better. Yeah,
there's actually Deschutes Brewery down in Oregon has started to actually put yeast back into their bottles. Okay, actually has yeast in their bottles, especially for hop forward beer, and the reasoning behind that, as far as I'm aware, is actually because having that yeast will scavenge oxidizing, especially oxygen and other oxidants within the beer to actually hold that shelf life a little better. With this said, if a bottle is 6 months old, it's an old beer anyway. But, for something like an IPA, that if you're bottling it and, it might be just a few week window of freshness, realistically, that can extend that out a few more weeks.
And this is especially important with, like, the mass distribution of so many different breweries that are available right now. You might be getting something that was really, really great on tap at the brewery, but then, when you get it off the store shelves and it's 3 weeks later and they don't have a properly packaged or an efficiently packaged
hot
system.
Warehouses.
Hot warehouses, the whole distribution network, it can destroy beers. Like, there are a lot of beers that you might taste and be like, God, this is a terrible brewery, and the beer's actually really good. They just don't have they don't have the means to package, which is why it's always best to drink local, support your local breweries, or
plug.
Because we're one of those.
Oh no, I'm not wearing a shirt.
Neither of us are.
Dang,
that wasn't thought out.
Not thought out at all.
But buy the beer as fresh as you can from the source, or be particular about the brewery that you're buying from, and make sure that they're packaging correctly. Or there are some beers that actually can't handle oxygen. So
something most homebrewers don't realize too is that even if you're kegging and you're like hardcore on the keg side, and you're like, I don't bottle age my beer, I keg it. Odds are, if you're kegging it, after a couple weeks of fermentation, there's still plenty of yeast. And if you pop the keg and you see a yeast cake in it, guess what? You just bottle conditioned your beer because you basically keg conditioned your beer.
Yeah, it's long-term storage.
Okay, well, I would say that pretty much sums up this video for our myths. Let us know, though, if we missed any, or if you have just any potential myths.
Or if we missaid something, because that can happen too, and we don't always watch our videos full on through in post.
Wow. Especially when we forget to add the left audio channel in.
Which apparently happens. But, let us know, whatever. Just talk to us, guys. We're really lonely. We just need the comments.
Talk to us. Give us some more myths, or even potential myths, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like, hey, does this really matter? Put that down in the comments. we will do an experiment on it, do some side-by-side beer batches, and probably put them back up to here. Okay, till next time. Peter's beer is empty.
My beer's empty, so we gotta go get some more.
Oh, like and subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe to the channel. We good now? I can turn it off now?
Yeah.
We got enough for the closeout and like the post-scene credits and everything like that?
I think so.
We've got a solid 5% battery left. I mean, we can keep going if we have, that's like, another 4 minutes. We could probably make it if we wanted to make this video longer.
I really don't want to make this video longer. Have we been going for 48 minutes? No, 17 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. We got an hour and 48 left on the memory card.
No, let's not make my life harder by keeping this going.
You want me to just keep it going?
No, please don't.
You just want me to keep it going?
No.
But what if, because you never know, like,